You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. And be sure to smash that like button. Shea Dixon's with us on 3 The Bengal Tiger. He's on Twitter at Shay Dixon. Shay's good enough to spend a couple of segments with us. If you missed last segment, we talked about C.J. Wiley today, picking Florida State, Jabari Antoine's decommitment, how LSU can get him back. We'll get all that on demand. Shay, I want to recap what was, until Sunday's decommitment from Jabari Antoine, seemingly an incredible weekend for LSU. Let me start before the commitments with Bryce Underwood. Just the significance, Shay, of Underwood being on campus this past weekend for Friday Night Lights.
Out there.
Wait, I'm sorry, Shay, your phone cut out. Could you start over, please?
Yeah. Well, I said it was massive. I mean, he flew back in from Michigan to Baton Rouge. This is the number one overall prospect in the class, regardless of position, but the number one quarterback in the country as well, or obviously, I should say. And he's still 16. He's going to be a senior. He doesn't turn 17 until August. And he's got well over 6'4", some of the best measurements in terms of hand size, wing in this class. I mean, he is what you draw up in a lab as an elite quarterback prospect. And that's what LSU's got right now with the work Joe Sloan and the staff has done. And he still has not made his official visit. He has visited, probably 3 or 4 times already again this year. But most importantly, this past weekend in town with Harlem Berry, their 5-star running back commit, with J.T. Lindsey, your other commit, a 4-star, who's a top 10 running back in the country. He was throwing to J.D. LaFleur, who is obviously LSU's tight end commitment right now coming out of Sulphur. And then Teron Francis, LSU's lone receiver commitment, was out there working with him. And defensively, I'm not even going to do this. I'm not going to name one of them. But Aiden Hall, a safety, a top 5 safety in the country out of Carr. The youngest Weeks brother, Whit and Wes' brother Zach, who's coming out of Oconee County. He's got an LSU offer. Blake Baker had him out there on kind of the first team defensive unit. And I don't know, he's the number one safety in the country. It's for next year. His name's Bradford. He plays here in town. I can't remember the school.
I mean, we can try it. Let's go.
I was going to do the guess. I was just going to guess Catholic.
Got it.
Yeah, but it was a who's who. And so to have Underwood around all those guys is a big deal, and for them to be around him, right? I mean, they all kind of feel that early camaraderie and start to talk to each other in group texts and all that from there. So even from the On3 Elite series a month ago, which I was up there in Nashville for, when Harlem and Bryce were there, they said that since then they've talked every day. So I think the more you get these guys around each other, the better. And I've been to a lot of camps. I won't say how many, but a lot of years of LSU camps. I haven't seen a quarterback outside of, and Caleb Williams threw here once, so maybe that range, but it was one of the most impressive showings I've seen from a kid who's going to be a senior in high school. This kid is the real deal. We've got 7+ minutes of footage up on YouTube. I'm sure you can just Bryce Underwood or the Bengal Tiger. It's on there. You can watch it. He was phenomenal, Matt. So yes, it is always good to have him down, and he'll be back for games and then an official visit. And then he said he's signing in December and has still not stepped foot on another campus in any recruiting capacity since he committed in January.
Music to everybody's ears. Everything else just seems so less significant with how great that appears to be going right now. Let me ask you about Colton Nussmeier, Garrett's younger brother. What kind of prospect is he? What are the deets there?
And younger brother, but not smaller brother. He's taller. He's taller at this point. And he's only going to be a sophomore, and he's already stacked up offers. But north of 6'3", I saw their dad was out there watching. Obviously, Doug is a quarterback and a longtime coach. But when I joked with Garrett about Colton being taller than he was already going into the 10th grade, I tried to make the same joke to his dad, and they were not happy about it because when Dad gets passed up by the 10th grader, they wouldn't even go back to back. But good size, he's a lefty, so that's a bit of a switch up from obviously Garrett. But coming out of Marcus, as I said, I mean, TCU, SMU, Texas Tech, he's got some in-state offers there, but Ole Miss, North Carolina, you name it. I mean, he's up to probably 15, 16 offers by now. LSU will certainly have an eye on him with Joe Sloan doing the recruiting and having Garrett as a starting quarterback this year. And we'll see how it goes. That family is obviously, if he were to get an LSU offer, what would it mean? The 2027 class is a long way away, but that family's bounced around all over because of coaching and his playing career. So I wonder if that wouldn't mean settling into two straight Nussmeyers. We've seen it with others, the Jeffersons, the Weeks. We can keep on going here with the Nussmeyers, but we'll see how the next 2 years pan out.
Shay, let's talk about what we do know, the hay in the barn, so to speak, and 3 commits this past weekend. We'll start with the 20. We'll just go proximity, so we'll start with 2025. So Jesse Harold, an edge out of Tampa, 4-star commits. What's LSU getting here in Harold?
Big time. This was a guy that kept things like C.J. Wiley very close to the vest. But as a top 100 prospect, it just doesn't happen a ton. I mean, we've got him at On3 ranked as the number 9 edge rusher in the country and the number 66 overall prospect, regardless of position. Coming out of Tampa, he's got great size, someone that Peoples and this defensive staff had kind of identified early on when they got here. Got him in for his official visit. Then he was supposed to go midweek to Georgia on an official visit and then spend this past weekend at A&M. And when he canceled both those visits and said, all right, I'm about to announce, it became evident, whoa, LSU might have pulled this off. And Friday, he called up the staff and committed. On Saturday it was, I guess, made his college reveals. So that was a big addition. Like I said, we knew the defensive staff, given they all got here in January, and everybody else out there has been recruiting their guys, for the most part, for long past that, or long before that. But it would take them a minute to catch up to where the offense is with Brad Davis and what he's done on the O-line, and obviously what we've seen with Underwood and Barry and guys like that being in. But landing a guy like this as an edge rusher, I think, is a great first domino to drop. And we've seen them add linebackers already, but this is the first kind of edge D lineman, and they're still searching for that first DB. So, like I said, I think the next month will be heavy on defensive commitments, and Harold gets things rolling there. That's a big one.
Shay, I want to ask you about the On3 rankings, because a lot of people, I think we've just been conditioned for so long to how rankings look, and On3 I know does it differently. And the way that I've kind of stressed it to people is, well, On3 kind of does a quality over quantity type ranking. So there's LSU with just 12 commits, but third behind Ohio State, Georgia, which have 19 and 15 respectively, and Bama's fourth with 18 commitments. So LSU with far fewer commitments, third in the country. Can you explain how that works with On3?
Yeah, so I really do like how we do this because I think it's the most accurate. We do a rolling count. So the average number of commits for Power 5 or whatever we're at now, Power 4, however you want to call it, programs out there, as the recruitment goes, obviously each team's getting more commits. Well, not everyone's moving at the same pace. Early on, a team could have 15 commits and another have 3 commits. Well, if one team has 3 commits and they're all 5 stars and the other team has 15 and they're all 3 stars, which team's pacing better? And we go with a rolling number. So right now, that number is capped at 12. So it's an average of your best 12 commitments, and then that spits out your score. So Ohio State, like you said, with 19, Georgia 15, LSU with 12, Bama with 18, Clemson with 13, Notre Dame's above 20 at 21. But how I just listed those is the current order of the 1 through 6 in the On3 rankings, and with it going off of your best 12 commits and the average of whether they are 3 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars, whatever it might be. But LSU with 12 commits, Matt, their blue chip rating, which 11, I can do the math in my head, 11 of those 12 are either 5 stars or 4 stars, 2 of them are 5 stars, and 6 of the 12, so half of them are top 100 prospects. That's the highest blue chip rate of anyone in the country right now. The only one that would be above 90%. So, yeah, the only one above 90% right now out there with double-digit commits is LSU. So an impressive start for them with those double-digit guys.
And they got an early start on 2026 as well. So let's talk about each of these guys. Richard Anderson out of Carr in New Orleans. Let's start there. A little bit of his backstory and why he decided to become the first commit for 26.
Yeah, I think Carr kids, usually you can, if I were to name a handful of schools where they don't lose guys very often that they want, Carr would be one of them. So he's been exposed to the program at LSU. They've been after him for a long time. I'll tell you what he's ranked right now, Matt. 4-star, number 9 lineman in the country. number 117 overall. Okay, I'm not on the rankings team. I'll bet he finishes higher than that. This is one of their better commitments. I think that in what is a very stacked 2026 class in Louisiana and whoever else they get from out of state. But we talk about guys like Blaine Bradford, Keith Stewart's the number one player in the country coming out of St. Aug next year. Lamar Brown here at U-High is a top 5 player right now. Bradford's a top 10 player. All those guys will be 5 stars, and they have a lot more guys in the state that are really elite. But Richard Anderson is in that conversation, and that's from talking to people at multiple programs, let alone what the folks coming out of, the coaches at Carr think. So that one's going to be a really big one. We'll look up down the road and at a need position like D-line, and when we get to talking about next year's class, they have already offered, I think, 4 or 5, Matt, D-linemen in Louisiana. So to knock one of those dominants down early, especially him, is a really big one.
So Richard Anderson popped on Friday, and he became the first pledge for 2026. And again, these are rising juniors, guys that just finished their sophomore year of high school. So a long way to go before they get to a point where they can put pen to paper. But then a day later, Jakai Anderson, another guy from the New Orleans area in McDonough 35, he announced. Shea, explain this a little bit, because as I understand it, when I look at his On3 profile, Jakai Anderson is listed as a safety, but LSU offered him as a receiver.
Yes, and no relation between these two Andersons, pure coincidence. At least I don't think. But obviously, yes. A McDonough kid who's playing receiver. And they're not twins, I'll tell you that. There's very different bodies between these two guys. But yes, Jakai just wrapped up in the fall, his sophomore year at McDonough. So you get a pair of New Orleans guys here. And they've dipped into 35 in the past when they've had, big-time prospects, and he'll be one of them. He's already 6 feet. They've worked him out at receiver. He can play both, but he was at summer camp last year. I remember he was worked out at receiver. He got offered by the LSU staff during his sophomore season at McDonough 35. So clearly he was already someone that they've been targeting for well over 6 months. And then, which I like here, I think he camped at least twice. I saw him at least twice at LSU camp in the past few weeks, and he already had an offer. He didn't have to be out. A lot of these kids will get an offer and say, all right, I don't need to go work out anymore. But he was out there getting reps with the older guys at the elite camp and then again at Friday Night Lights. In fact, he was part of that receiver group when Underwood and Harlan Berry and J.T. Lindsey and Teron Francis, for instance, and J.D. LaFleur, all their commits, including now Anderson, were out there running around. So, yeah, I think they saw how he fit into that group and said, look, let's go ahead and push for his commitment, and they got it done. So nice to start next year, which, again, will be a very deep Louisiana group with your first 2 commits for the class being Louisiana guys.
Shay, before we let you go, let's put a button on the conversation just with, like, the 10,000-foot view. If you were to just give us the overview, not only how this weekend went, but how at this point Brian Kelly and this staff, which the whole defensive staff was made over, how they're doing on the recruiting trail. How would you best summarize it?
The number 3 class? Yeah, I don't know. I can use one word or 2 words. Number 3? No, I think they've been excellent, Matt. And look, you can lose a Jabari Antoine, and maybe you get him back, and we won't know the end result of what the class looks like until signing day, right? And even then, you say, okay, well, let me see how it all unfolds on the field. But to be sitting and look, we can get into NIL discussions. I actually think that they're probably set up for NIL and their approach and what they're able to pitch on official visits to kids is so far from where it was at this time a year ago when they had to go through June officials, that in a good way, right, that they're going to be able to compete with these other schools in regards to that and pitching kind of the highest level kids. But to be able to do this with Ohio State, Georgia, Bama, Clemson, those are the same teams before NIL, right? That were the who's who of college football, top classes. It doesn't look any different. And that's because I think that they stick to their formula and they execute it. And look, it doesn't get any bigger. You have a 5-star running back in the state in Harlan Berry. You had to get him. They did. And to go out and get Bryce Underwood, the number 1 player in the country, the number 1 quarterback, a guy who a lot of people considered sort of a generational type program changer, where every handful of 5-10 years, a guy like him comes along that is just so clearly low ceiling or low floor, I should say, kind of end up a first-round NFL draft pick one day, and then build it from there and get him out of Michigan with no connections to LSU and just did it off of your product on the field, your coaches, what you've shown with development of Jaden Daniels. I think that's capitalizing on the success they had on that offense, right? Like, yes, they didn't make the New Year's Six or any of that because the defense was historically bad. But we're at least seeing beyond the Heisman, they have some things to take away from it and some first-round picks. It's that they've parlayed that into some really good recruiting, and now the defensive staff gets to settle in, and I think by the end this will be a top 5 class, which is what Brian Kelly has had the past 2 seasons. So right on pace.
Shay Dixon, On3 the Bengal Tiger. You're the best, man. Thanks so much for carving out 2 segments for us today. We appreciate it.
No problem at all. We'll talk next week, Matt.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.